Hello, my fellow readers. Dark78777 with another fan fiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, the story I'm doing a reading of today is Mind Your Manners by Thomas the Betrayer. It's a Muramasa. Thank God we finally got a Muramasa fanfiction. Thank God! I love this game. This is like one of my favorite games of all time. If you know, I actually did a Let's Play of Muramasa. And if I did like a top 10 video games I've ever played, Muramasa would actually be in that top 10 because holy shit, that game is so addicting to play and enjoy. And the art style, the music, the characters, mainly. Granted, some of the stories could be better because you have to read between the lines a lot, but I love this story. I love this game. So let's just get into it. Drifting in and out of fever dreams. Pain, followed by terrible weakness. The kind that's have both body and spirit. The last king, Kisuke, remembered. Torihime screaming his names. Help over here! He's losing blood! Kisuke! Kisuke! But nothing but silence greeted him. I must be dead, he thought. As if in response, a low swishing noise registered faintly. At the same time, Kisuke thought he could hear someone breathing. A second later, he realized it was himself. Breathing. Heartbeat too. Alive. His eyes snapped open, and he shot up with a gasp. Torihime! A woman crashed nearby to turn at his cry. For a moment, he thought it was her. Then the image of the warrior maiden in antique armor dissolved away. In her place, a curvaceous figure wearing a pale green kimono watched him with blue eyes that glowed a magic hue. Awake already, Yurizura sighed. You certainly are resilient, Kisuke-sama. Her pointed ears twitched slightly. The fox spirit then went back to mixing something in a stone pestle, her arm moving with slow, steady concentration. Okay, so before I continue on, I'm trying to remember the events of Kisuke's story. I know there was a part where he does get seriously injured. I'm trying to remember where. Alright, so yeah, where was I? I'm pretty sure this was the penultimate. I think this was the penultimate boss. No. The Dragon God was the penultimate boss because in Kisuke's story it goes the big fat ninja with the shurikens, then the centipedes, then Torihime, and yeah, it goes the big ninja, the centipedes, Torihime, then Juruguma. I think it was Juruguma, and then this guy. I think because after those would be the Dragon God, and no, not the Dragon God. No, there's another boss after Torino. There's the shaman. I completely forgot about the shaman. So big ninja, centipedes, Torihime, the shaman, then Duraguma, then I think the guy's name was Bishamon, then the Dragon God, then the Shogun. I'm much more familiar with Momohime's bosses. So it's been a while since I played Muramasa, so I'm kind of rusty on the specifics of their names. But I'm pretty sure those. But I know those are the 8 bosses because both stories have 8 bosses, and stuff like that. Where was it? Okay. Her arm. Oh yeah, it was the sound that had roused him. Peering around, the wearing ninja noted they were in a small room, sparsely furnished but neat and cozy all the same. The doors at one end opened onto a balcony, though which he could see the sun climbing over high mountains. The sky glowed red and purple, though dark clouds were still visible farther off, in the direction of. Suddenly it all came rushing back. The battlefield of the plains of Kawakujima. Two armies of dead clashing against one another, in which the resurrected Shiro forces sought to overwhelm Tomohime's smaller complement of samurai still loyal to the Gami clan, even in death. With their side heavily outnumbered, Kisuke sought out and challenged the Shiro general Chiguri Bishop. So this is literally a novelization of that cutscene after you beat Bishamon, because what happened was they fight Bishamon. Kisuke manages to defeat him, but as he's about going away, before Bishamon goes down, he's like, "No, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with him." And he like opens his armor in half and does like his his ultimate wind blade attack, which destroyed Kisuke and caused him to have to recover with the Kitsune. So this is literally a novelization of that scene. Nice, nice, Thomas. Okay. Putting his Ouroboros style and Masamune blades against the spiteful fury of that long-dead warrior. In the end, he had triumphed, but Bishamon, unwilling to accept defeat gracefully, managed one last sneak attack when his back was turned. Cowardly bastard. For the first time, Kisuke noticed the bandages that covered his whole torso. A loincloth was his only nod to dress. Aside from this, he was naked. Carefully, the young ninja reached a hand behind him and tried to assess the wound's severity. Doing so, he nearly passed out again. Yuzura caught him before he could fall and further aggravate his injuries. With professional gentleness, she guided him to lie flat on his stomach before returning to her task. "You will need at least another day to recover, I'm afraid," she informed him in a light-hearted tone. "But as things stand, there should not be too much of an inconvenience." "What happened?" he grumbled, feeling ridiculous at being splayed out like a fish ready to be gutted. The enemy army was broken thanks to your efforts. At Torihime-sama's request, we brought you to a manor in the mountains of Shinano. No, it's not Shinano, where we could see to your recovery. The route to the capital is now clear, but there's still the matter of the barrier that protects him. Our mission is at a standstill until we have cleared this hurdle. Till then, you should rest. But Kisuke could sit still no longer. Taking a deep breath, he leveraged himself up until he was in a sitting position. Yuzura swiveled to regard him, her mass of long, silvery hair swishing around her body with even a small movement. Head cocked to one side, she regarded him with an unreadable expression, as though waiting to see what her rebellious underling had in mind next. Something foolish, no doubt. Be ashamed to disappoint her, for now. The young ninja chose to gather information. And Torihime. A white-skinned hand brushed leisurely through luxurious pearl hair. Basically, the hair is basically is hiding her huge, gigantic badonkadonk. To kind of compensate for the fact that Momohime's fox Kangaku has like gigantic tits. Like if you see my Let's Play of Muramasa, yeah, her tits are fucking huge. They're like as big as you heard the phrase "tits as big as your head." In Kangaku's case, that's literal. They're as big as her head. Okay, let me get back to this. Okay. She is heading to Mount Fuji in Shiroga, where she will help beseech the dragon who decides therein to drop the mystical barrier behind which her enemy cowers. Once this is accomplished, you may both resume your efforts to recover the Kazuryo blade. His one visible eye, not covered by a shock of black hair, drifts to one side, then rose to fix on her with fierce determination. "Bring me my swords." Sharp eyes, the color of lapis lazuli, seem to take stock of him, noting the unhealthy pallor of skin and sweat dappling his forearms. "You can do nothing more than help her. Recover your strength, and let us play our part. Time has not yet run out for either of you, Kisuke-sama." She reached forward her hand to offer comfort. "Trust me." A wiry fist seized her wrist, squeezing hard. Kisuke's mouth was half open to reiterate his demand when a growl made him freeze. At first he assumed it came from Yuzura, but when he turned his head, several pairs of eyes watched him from the shadows of a partially open doorway. The presence of so many fox spirits should have come as no surprise. The pack never strayed far from their leader, though dutiful service to Imiajun. The fox was still a fox. They hungered for blood like any other predator. Never before had Kisuke felt the naked threat of those unpredictable creatures like he did now. Speaking of naked, considering his own situation, perhaps it would be wise not to bake the beast. Oborosaro will know. But as now, he still had little chance of coming out on top against these odds. With that mind, he released his grip, holding up both hands to show he meant no harm. Several giggles came in response, and the glowing eyes vanished, shutting the door behind them. Yuzura nursed her wrist with a slight frown as though searching for any trace of a bruise. Seeing this caused Kisuke to feel guilt at his impulsive action. In addition to everything else, he now owed the fox spirit his life. Whatever hopes he might have to redeem himself for ruining Torihime's future now rested, in large part, on whether or not he could convince Yuzura to still support him. It's kind to Koto, and hard. Scooting back, the repentant warrior bowed down until his forehead touched the tatami mat. Please forgive me, he muttered, feeling time lapse with every word, but knowing it had to be done. I understand what's at stake, and yet I can't leave Torihime to fight this war alone. It's my responsibility. If you allow me to leave here, I swear I will not die until your master's wish has been fulfilled. You have my word. With bated breath, he waited unmoving to see if his speech had the desired effect. Seconds ticked by. Nothing more was said. Kisuke was about to argue even further when a finger guided across his back, close enough to the recent room to make him tense. Above him, there came an amused chuckle. Dear me, Yuzura sighed. How noble you sound. Our dear Torihime-sama could not ask for a finer Yojimbo than you. Her fingers stroked up and down his spine, light and caressing, but never falling to draw across the injury without regard for how it might make him feel. I can only imagine how happy she would be to know you think so highly of her. Thoughts of his own words being repeated back to Torihime made him flush with embarrassment. Would the fox spirit really do that? Or was she just teasing him? While wondering this, her fingers suddenly sliced with surgical precision through the wrappings that covered his back. The next moment, he had been wrenched upright, with one arm twisted painfully behind him. Oh, to be young again. Yuzura purred in his ears and gave it a playful lick. It was all Kisuke could do not to black out again. For her intent was to show him just how badly injured his body remained. She certainly wasn't pulling any punches. It hurt so bad he couldn't even breathe. Lightheaded from shock and lack of oxygen, the room spun around like a kaleidoscope. Sweat poured down his face, his whole body screaming for this to stop. Reflexively, he bit his own lip hard, focusing on the taste of blood and self-inflicted pain, as he had been taught. The hold in his arm let go. Uttering a quick gasp of air back into his lungs, he rolled forward, flipping around as he did to land on his bare feet in a crouch, poised to fight or flee. A wild animal balked to bay. Severed bandages slid down his ribs or trailed to the ground. Seeing this, Yuzura smiled. She began to crawl leisurely towards him. She did. Blue flames flared into light all around her, and the fox matron's alluring form shimmered. In moments, that hauntedly beautiful face had transformed into something altogether different. She more closely resembled a fox now, not quite human, and not quite animal, with a long muzzle and white fur running all across her skin. As a servant of the gods, the werebeast spoke while prowling around him. You are afforded liberties, Kisuke-sama. Any other mortal who treated me in such a disrespectful manner would be missing an arm by now. She paused, eyes drifting down past his stomach. Black lips peeled to reveal fangs. A laugh like a yip of a fox that had that long red tongue lipped at her chops. Among other things. The implications had him clapping a hand protectively to the front of his loincloth, lip curling in anger and embarrassment. Kisuke twisted as well as he could to keep the foxwoman in sight, as she continued to circle her prey. Doing so risked further harm to his wound, but right now that seemed the lesser of two perils. But we are both bound by our duties, Ninbo. So as long as you continue to meet with success this mission, I shall see to your well-being with all the power at my disposal. She enters his blind spot, and the shinobi quickly spun around, to be greeted by a suddenly empty green konomo fluttering shapelessly to the floor. A body slammed into him from behind. Kisuke pressed hard to knock the wind from his lungs. For a time, he could only gasp in astonishment. The war was losing focus again. Nonetheless, he clearly registered 4 small piles, pressing down on the muscles on his back. For both our sakes, I will not have you needlessly risking life. Switched of her tail over sweat-soaked skin, and she hopped off him. Bare white feet passed before his eyes. Startled, Kisi looked up just in time to see a fully human Yuzura crouched down with her back to him. An absolute wreath of silvery hair now served to hide her clearly naked body from view. The fox maiden took hold of her discarded kimono, then slipped upright, somehow managing to be completely dressed as she did, high sole-sealed shoes and all. The lustrous hair now flowed down the front of her kimono. The sleeves had slid down low to leave her shoulders bare, and Kisuke was treated to the sight of back muscles flowing like water as she glanced at him on the ground, staring up at her. Of that, you can be sure, she spoke softly. Of that, you can be sure, she spoke softly. Having said this, she bent down and retrieved the pestle from earlier. He zeroed in nearby and proceeded to apply the ointment to his stinging wound. Fingers that only moments before seemed ready to rend him open now worked with practiced ease to offer comfort. Either medicine or her touch had magic in it, for he could not keep himself from relaxing, sinking into the floor with a groan, as all of his hurt seemed to melt away. Feeling thoroughly out of his depth, Kisuke could only do nothing but submit to her hopefully healing treatment. It was hard to tell how much time had passed in that manner. The sun appeared to be permanently rising or setting whenever Kisuke looked outside. Could this be fox magic at work? Well, that might ultimately prove to his advantage. He shat to being confined here. His mind raced furiously for a way to be kept by Torikime's side. Exploring the grounds proved to be no help. Sneaking out his stick room, whenever the foxes were off their business, invariably saw the determined ninja returning without success. Passages went on for an interminable length, or took so many turns he found himself right back to where he started. Here, too, he suspected supernatural trickery. Regardless, he continued to try and tease some sense out of the bewildering police whenever the fox left him alone. Sliding to open a door revealed yet another empty room, like so many had seen before. Muttering an oath, Kisuke prowled about, searching for hidden equipment which continued to loom despite all his efforts. After a few frustrating minutes, he was forced to concede defeat, and was just heading for the exit when a voice caused him to freeze. Ambushed. Sounded like the Fox girls were back. Kisuke knocked by the door, silent as mist. His training in the shadow arts serving to keep him undetected. What do you think? Shall we? Yuzura said he was okay. Come on, before she finds a reason not to. The shadows of several shapely figures paused behind a screen illuminated by a lamp. They continued down the hall, chatting and giggling. Once the light and noise of their departure receded sufficiently, Kisuke eased the screen open and crept out in pursuit. Perhaps they might lead him to the location of his gear. Certainly worth a shot. He had expected to lose their trail almost immediately in this perplexing maze. That did not prove to be the case. Stealthily, Kisuke trailed his targets until it sounded like they had reached their destination. Peeking around a corner, he caught a glimpse of the trio before two large, elegant screens shut behind them. With utmost caution, the shinobi edged down the hall until he could press his ear against the frame. Listening carefully, don't do this, okay? Listening carefully, he allowed him to pick up cloth rustling, followed by more sliding doors open. Hey, we're here! Great timing. Hop in and we'll get started. Splashing water drifted in the air. Was that a bath? He hadn't run across anything of the sort in his previous outings. By the sound of it, there were a lot of them in there. Easing open the door crack, he made out what looked to be a changing room. Several kimonos were folded neatly in piles along a shelf with shoes resting in the line below them. Steam drifted through the air, emitting a large screen in back, which must house the bath. Could one of you give me a shoulder massage? My neck is killing me. Have Kangaku do it. She can use those giant knockers to the door. Seriously, how do you manage those things? They weigh a ton. So I don't. I'll talk about this a bit. Seriously, how do you manage those things? They look like they weigh a ton. My master never complains about them. Bet. A quick search of the changing area confirmed his gear was not stored in there. Kisuke considered the situation. Most of the fox girls were here, and would afford him greater latitude to roam the grounds. Then again, they might let something slip in an unguarded moment. He could not dismiss this opportunity so freely. That settled, the spy crouched by the exit, keen ears picking up feminine chatter while keeping an eye peeled for anyone coming down the corridor. A couple of minutes of girl talk followed, accompanied by splashing and light teasing. He could make out tantalizing forms moving behind the transparent paper. Their outlines sometimes clear as day or matteringly blurry, appearing and disappearing ever so briefly. How's your little guest doing? I wouldn't know. Yuzura keeps him pretty much to herself. Think she got a thing for shonen? You mean the lone wolf? He's got such commanding eyes. Wouldn't mind letting him stroke my fur. You mean like this? Nothing really important, just girls being girls. Frustrated, Kisuke decided he was wasting his time and was just preparing to leave when. What do you think, Torihime-sama? His head snapped around. What? I beg your pardon? In a flash, he had crossed the changing area and had his ears pressed to the screen. The little ninja boy. He seems quite devoted to you. I do not believe this is a suitable topic for discussion. Kisuke's heart was pounding. I got a feeling this is a trap. Don't do it, Kisuke! Don't fall, the horny! Kisuke's heart was pounding. Could it really be? I sounded just like her. For some reason, he found himself worried about being caught for more than before. Yet all the same, he's trying to pick out every word. Oh, don't be so modest, princess. We're friends now. Let it all out. You just tell your big sisters how you really feel. Here, let me wash your back while you get everything off your chest. Well, if you would not consider it improper. Breathing hard, the eavesdropper licked his lips. He realized his arm was stretching out to the edge of the door, opened a crack, and snapped it back. No, that's off limits. Listening was one thing, but peeping on her in the bath, even if it was only for a second. You have most beautiful skin, Torihime-sama. You're most kind. His treacherous hand moved on its own volition. Only for a second he found himself repeating over and over. Only for a second. And I'll look away. It won't count if I look for just a second. Ever so quietly, he nudged the pane open, just enough to get the smallest possible peek. Then came the smack of a sliding door, and Kisuke was suddenly drenched. Knew it. Blinking, water running in his eyes, he stared at a crowd of naked foxwomen, all whom gazed right back, kneeling down with towels wrapped around their heads or standing in all their glory. One of them remained by the door, holding an empty bucket. Torihime was nowhere to be seen. A great swirl of magic followed. Then Kisuke found himself almost bowled over by a crowd of white foxes, yipping happily and nipping him in playful fashion as they went surging by. In moments, he found himself sprawled before an empty bath. Sound of girlish merriment disappearing down the hall behind him. Feeling more foolish than he can ever remember, the ninja rose up, dusted himself off irritably, and turned to leave. Doing so brought him face to face with Yuzura. Oh shit. The tall beauty regarded him with head cocked to one side. A bucket full of bath products held in the crook of one arm, and a towel draped over her other. Under her gaze, Kisuke felt smaller than an insect. At least the fox matron moved past him. She nestled her beauty products on a bench. Then, as Kisuke watched, Yuzura casually reached down and dragged the sash of her kimono loose, allowing it to come open. Fidgeting nervously, the youth darted looks around, wondering what exactly he should do. As he stood there in obviously discomfort, Yuzura suddenly asked, "Do you intend to wash my back, Kisuke-sama?" When she turned around, he was already gone. Shrugging, the fox matron went back to her cleansing. Kisuke lay on his stomach in his underwear, but Yuzura tended to his injuries. There was no mention of the humiliation he had suffered before. Thankfully, he found himself even more incensed at his fruitless situation and wished dearly to be allowed once more to continue his journey. Yet, at the same time, the image of that tall, inhuman enchantress as she gazed sternly down at him lingered. Thoughts of her heaven-sent form, blue sash cinched quietly around the trim waist. And those hips, full and round as the moon. Hips that can launch 1,000 ships. Yeah, hips. Yeah, yeah. The big old hips. He murmured. He can hear the smile in her voice. Are you dreaming, Kisuke-sama? She continued to apply the ointment. For a time, neither of them spoke. At least, Kisuke stirred. Hear me out, Yuzura. Her touch stilled. As you will. Carefully, so not as to aggravate his wound on her, he climbed to his knees and returned around. I've got a proposition for you. My heart swoons. She was only teasing, but for once that worked to his advantage. A servant of the gods, even one as devoted as you, must have her own desires. He knew he must look ridiculous. A young man clad in next to nothing kneeling before this sophisticated and splendidly dressed demigoddess. Nothing his spine straightened. And he took a deep breath. So how about yes? If you see fit to let me go in pursuit of Torihime now, I'll do everything in my power to fulfill them. Uh, Her head tilted to one side, her black tipped fox ears twitching in curiosity. My desires. Yes. User appeared to consider this, fingers idly swirling in the creamy pop poultice as she did. No matter what they might be? His black eyes didn't flicker on the stylus. Anything. Even if I commanded you to bring me the head of the Emperor, or the Buddha himself. At this, a sardonic smirk worked its way up his face. Well, as to the former, I'll probably have to kill him anyway. You just sent me on the road to Nirvana, and I'll do the rest. Her head reached out to begin rubbing the compound against his chest in slow, languid circles. Also tight, as rope tense under her touch. It was warm in here, but all the same, Kisuke trembled. How charming it is. Heavy lidded blue eyes rose to lock with his own. An earnest young man. The situation was having an effect on the parts of his body that a mere loincloth couldn't hide. Kisuke's teeth ground together. There was an edge of desperation to his voice as he stated, your answer? Long, elegant fingers came to rest against his chest, as though feeling for a heartbeat. To say this was racing didn't begin to describe it. Emotions of all sorts roared within the young man, but he kept his face cool to impassivity. Her own looked much the same. There was no way to tell that Yuzuru might be thinking right now. Well then... 15 minutes later saw Kisuke strapping on his armor. The Fox Maiden had supplied him with all his equipment, right down to the skulls of his former comrades, which once again dangled, grinning mockingly from his belt. Were they laughing at him now? No surprise there. Once he was settled, the ninja youth slid a long sword into his scabbard at the back of with a satisfying click. He looked up at the bevy of beautiful spirits right up before him. Their leader at the head, Izura, had produced a closed fan and was holding it before her mouth, teeth nibbling on the length of the lacquered wood like a fox with a bone. Her eyes never left Kisuke for a moment. Thank you, he grunted with a nod. His guardian left her off her canine pursuits for a moment to respond. We shall be departing from Mount Fuji shortly, and should arrive ahead of you. My kin are keeping track of Torihima as we speak. In case of danger, we will send word. Guess I'll see you in Shigura then. I advise you not to overexert yourself. She swept the fan open, hiding her face behind it to peep open over the edge. Our eyes are upon you as well, Ninbo. The irises in the manor residence all seemed to flash at once. Various golds of hue. Gold, green, and blue. Kisuke knew what it meant. He would be permitted to act on his own for now. But any recklessness might endanger him. The recovery of the Kizura blade, and Yuzuru will snap the leash taut. As he turned to leave, she called out, Take care, Kisuke-sama. I'll be waiting. Kisuke glanced behind him, but Yuzuru had already turned away to begin marshalling her forces. For just a moment he hesitated, wondering what the future might hold in store for him. Then the small warrior spun around and dashed toward the ghost speeding on his way south. The rain had just begun to come down in earnest when by sheer chance they came across an abandoned inn. Alone on this narrow path through the mountains, there was no way to tell how long it had been left in disrepair. But the alternative was getting to soak to the skins, so the two travelers approached this unexpectedly succor gratefully. Kisuke went in first to scout the terrain while his charge waited outside. Once he had determined to his satisfaction that no perils lurked from within, whether within yokai or bandits, the valiant bodyguard stepped back outside. It's safe, he told her. With a grateful sigh, Momohime... Okay, so this is... Okay. So I need to actually explain the context with this. So in Muramasa, there's 3 endings each. So there's normal ending there, and there's a second ending we can only get when you wield a specific sword. No, you can only get the second ending. Yeah, when you have the specific sword and you basically fight the other playable character. So if you play as Momohime, you fight Kisuke. You fight Kisuke, you play as Momohime. And then there is the final sword. There's the final ending when you can get where you can only get when you have the Uburo Murasama, basically allowing you to go back in time and change certain events in history, and then you get the third ending. The most common ending I see of these fanfictions, because I'm going to be reviewing another Muramasa story, is the one is Momohime's second ending, where she basically defeats Kisuke, and then she loses her memory, and basically, uh, no, wait. No, this is not Momohime's. That's the other one. Momohime's B story is the reading. I kind of realized too late. This is Kisuke's second story. This is like Kisuke's B story, where Kisuke manages to purge Jinkuro from Momohime, kind of separate the souls and send them to the afterlife. And Torihime dies. So basically now, uh, Kisuke and Momohime are basically scouring all across Japan, basically looking for the other Muramasas. Basically, the whole point of Kisu's story is the Kizura blade was held by the shogun, and he was a very, very corrupt individual, and he was using the blade to commit mass atrocities. And this ending kind of explores that by allowing them to go all across Japan and find other blades like this that are actually corrupting other individuals and kind of basically dispensing justice. A lot of people seem to really prefer the B endings. So you have this ending, and you have Momohime's ending, where she kind of loses her memory and then absorbs, and then assumes the identity of Oboro. Yeah, these are like the two most common stories that they kind of follow along. So let me get back to this. With a grateful sigh, Momohime passed by him. The Princess of Kagami, younger sister now departed to Orihime, soon went bustling about seeking to spruce up their temporary shelter. In no time, she had managed to locate bedding for both of them and had a lit cheerful blaze in the fire pit. Despite being abandoned, the roof of the inn remained in good condition. They did not need fear being rained on for at least one night. It was hard to say which of them greeted this prospect with a greater relish. Once their needs had been seen to and supper was finished, okay. Uh, once their needs had been seen to and supper was finished, the two sword hunters bedded for the night. Kisuke took first watch, alert to any danger which might come calling. He sat with back against the wall and sword propped up on his shoulder as Momohime settled happily under the mushy but still warm covers. Its grate was popped between their sleeping areas, her having insisted he drag it in there so there'd be no trace of impropriety. Priority. Priority? I'm having trouble pronouncing that word. This was one of the few holdovers to her days as royalty Momohime insisted upon, and her appointed servant did not begrudge his partner with such modesty. For the past few months, Japan had been in a state of turmoil with the death of Shogun Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi. Yet despite this being entirely due to their actions, little in the way of pursuit ever materialized on the trail. At times, Kisuke had to wonder if someone might still be looking over them even now. He wasn't about to complain either way. Since accepting Torihime's dying wish to protect the only family that remained to her, two had crossed the lengths and breadth of Japan, seeking to locate and secure any remaining Muramasa swords which lurked in seemingly every recess, waiting to draw blood. The idea was Momohime's, perhaps a nod to keeping her family traditions alive despite her clan no longer existing. Her sister had died twice to see no harm come to the ancient weapon entrusted to them so long ago. Now that Inugami had been sealed away and the Kizero once more and that dangerous blade safely hitting, the princes and ninja continued their duty. A light caught his eye. When Kisuke turned to look, he spied something like blue flame bobbing through the crack of an open screen. Before he can confirm this, the light winked out as quick as a candle. Some might have left it at that. Not him. Drawing his sword without a sound, he crept across the room and pressed against a half-open door, peering into the gloom at the back of the inn. Around the corner, there disappeared a small white shape. Kisuke blinked. Slowly, he eased the Muramasa back into its sheath. Glancing back at where Momohime slept, he could hear her peaceful breathing. Once assured of this ninja stole down the hall. He walked for longer than one might expect. The inn certainly hadn't looked very big from the outside. A hint of magic traveled down his spine, making old wounds itch. All the same, Kisuke felt no fear. Any danger, whatever it might be, did not derive from malice. At least, he kept telling himself that. Lamplight burned ahead, warm and yellow. The corridor ended in a spacious chamber from which there was no other exit. In the dark, he could see little of his surroundings, but it did not seem quite so derelict as the rest of the house. Quite cozy, really. The light came from behind a large folding screen set up in the room center. A shadow moved over rice paper plains. To his eyes, the shape strongly resembled a tall, slender woman with abundant hair. He had wondered when this might happen. She did tell him they'd be watching. Kisuke adjusted the long scarf he wore. He pulled it up to hide his face, then patted silently across the way and moved boldly around the curtain. A single lantern sat upon a table. Scented smoke rose from a brass incense burner. Cushions and blankets had been piled in a circle, making this a comfortable little abode. And reclining on one such mound, smoking a pipe with all the appearance of tranquility, there sat Izura. In place of her usual attire, the fox matron now wore a black kimono with red on the sleeve, helms, and crossfall. The color choice set off her unusual pallor, almost as though she was a star glimmering in the deepest depths of night. And red looked surprisingly good on her. One sleeve had slipped down to leave her shoulder visible. A few stray wisps of silvery hair drifted before her face. Those dazzling blue eyes were almost completely closed. She did not look up at his approach, only said, "Good evening, Kisuke-sama." The teen looked at the sight before him. He glanced back the way he come. "You need not fear. My sisters are looking after your friend. We are quite safe here." "Is that a fact?" Still, she made no attempt to look at him. Slowly, Kisuke pulled his scarf low, then drew closer, easing himself down to sit in front of her. Smoke from pipe and incense drifted around them both. It was warm here, despite no fire being present. "Well," he said after a moment with nothing more came from her end, "we're here. Well, now." In response, Yuzura reached out to settle her pipe in a small metal bowl. She then swiveled around and placed both her hands on the floor, leaning towards him until the distance between them hardly existed. In doing so, the dress fell even further down her shoulder, exposing more diamond white flesh. She regarded the black-haired shinobi, eyes searching his face with interest as though inspecting a portrait. Looking deep into his eyes, Yuzura finally said, "I have a desire, Kisuke-sama. One you are sworn to fulfill." Kisuke licked his lips, nervous in a way he hadn't felt since Torihime was alive. The fox's spirit was drifting closer to his own, only a scant inch apart now, yet she appeared to be waiting for him to make the next move. He darted glances at her eyes and mouth, wondering if this was going where he thought, not sure if that was where she wanted, and even more uncertain if he wanted it too. The blue eyes gazed at him expectantly. The hell with it, he thought. The boy leaned forward, tilting his head as he did. Yuzuru copied him. This close, he almost believed he could see her lashes fluttering against his skin. His lips brushed hers, jerking back for a moment, before the sudden pounding in his chest compelled Kisuke past any remaining doubts. They kissed. His hand slid to the front of her robe, parting it, then moving past to take hold of those delicious hips and dig in, lifting her up and drawing her closer to him at the same time. White art draped around his shoulders, and delicate fingers slipped through her shaggy hair, sending alarming jolts of pleasure up his spine. A few giggles told him they had an audience, but Kisuke didn't care. He had just reached over and snipped out the candle, ignoring the protesting cries that followed. The fox and her pupil turned all their attention to each other. Much remained to do. That night was young. Finn. So that is Mind Your Manners. Holy shit, this was a good story. All I'm going to do is say this. Thomas, if you watch this video, I'm please begging you, do a novelization of Muramasa. I legitimately think you're good enough to pull it off. No shot. This is amazing. The fact that it's based off a specific cutscene in Muramasa and it kind of expands that and it kind of falls up is amazing. I genuinely want to see more from this. I want to see you do more with this series. I legitimately think you could pull off a novelization of Muramasa. It'll be hard because you have to really figure out how you're going to do the endings, because here's the thing in Muramasa. Both stories happen at the same time, which is why as you travel across the stories, you kind of meet Kisuke and Momohime, i.e. Jinkuro, kind of meet each other at certain parts on their journey. Momohime being possessed by Jinkuro to kind of ascend to heaven, while Kisuke trying to get the Kizuro blade from Shogun Togawa. I think the author can pull it off. I don't know how long would it take, but with this level of writing, Like, this is 5 out of 5. Like, hell, I'm almost tempted to put in Better Off this story in Better Off Volunteer. It was that well written. With everything, with playing respect to the franchise, respect to the game. I know it's not a franchise because it's a one-off game. It's such an amazing game. I have no complaints, except for this part where I wanted to talk about this. Mentioning Kangaku. So, this is the only part I technically have a problem with. Specifically because of the circumstances behind Muramasa. Kangaku shouldn't be there. Because, for all intents and purposes, in Momohime's story, Kangaku is considered an outcast because the Buddhas, basically the Imyojins, they shun Kangaku because she was willing to help Jinkuro, and she kind of made that clear throughout Momohime's story that she's kind of that the gods are not really looking fondly out of her. To the point they stripped away most of her powers. Like, she has some help, she has some of the kitsune abilities, but she doesn't really have as much access to a lot of stuff as Yuzura because of the fact that the gods are basically just shutting her off. Basically, it's like, you can't do this because you're literally helping a guy who wants to murder us. But I love him. God! So I don't know because especially consider the fact the plots happen at the same time. So there's no. I mean, there is a chance Kakanku could be there. It doesn't make sense that she would be there because all the other kids would quite easily shun her because she's essentially working with a murderer. So I don't know. I know it's such a minor thing because it's fan fiction. You can kind of do what you want. But this whole sentence, this whole little phrase right here, it's just honestly rubbing me the wrong way. It's not gonna stop me from loving the story. Not at all. This story's amazing, and I really hope, Thomas, you I want to see I want to see a Muramasa novelization. Muramasa is honestly one of my favorite games of all time. I want to see it done. I want to see it done justice. I want justice for this game. But that's all I can really say on the story. 5 out of 5, easy 5 out of 5. Just immaculate. This little couple sentences aside, immaculate, amazing, just spectacular. No other complaints. There's nothing. I have nothing bad to say about this besides these. So that is Mind Your Manners. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.